Is there anything else you want to say?
What happens when Maria Elena Santos, a resilient 29-year-old single mother who has spent the last 2 years fighting in desperation and tears against a rotten system to win back her little 4-year-old son, Leo? A woman who works tirelessly at 2 jobs, waiting tables in the morning shift and cleaning floors as a janitor on the night shift, scraping together every single dollar to prove her financial stability, but who finds herself trapped in the web of lies spun by Linda Perkins, a 52-year-old senior social worker.
Is there anything else you want to say?
The woman who on the surface always presents herself as a saint protecting children, who is honored as Employee of the Year at the Rhode Island Department of Children's Services, but who behind those neat business suits and that fake smile is a ruthless manipulator, someone who has turned her power into a tool to destroy families for personal gain and performance statistics. Linda Perkins, the person holding the power of life and death over the Santos family, has constructed a falsified profile that is terrifyingly perfect. She reported that Maria was an irresponsible mother, an addict who neglected her children, despite the fact that Maria had submitted to over 50 drug tests in the last 2 years, and every single one, 100%, came back negative. But those results mysteriously vanished from the file presented to the court, replaced instead by fabricated notes about Maria being absent from visitation appointments, when in reality, Maria arrived 30 minutes early every single time, sitting and crying in the hallway because Linda Perkins deliberately changed the schedule at the last minute without notice, just to write that cold line in the report. Mother failed to appear. A brutal psychological tactic designed to paint a portrait of Maria as a mother who didn't want her son, paving the way to push little Leo into a closed adoption system where a wealthy couple with political influence was already waiting to take the child. The tragedy began with a minor accident at a playground when little Leo scraped his knee falling down, something that happens to any active child. But when Maria took her son to the hospital just to be safe, Linda Perkins swooped in like a vulture smelling prey. She accused Maria of abuse, ripping the child from his mother's arms right there in the emergency room, amidst the heart-wrenching screams of both mother and son, beginning a nightmare journey that has lasted 730 days. Maria was banned from seeing her son, forced to attend meaningless parenting classes, which she always passed with flying colors, and watched over in every move. And every time she tried to complain, Linda threatened to revoke visitation rights permanently. Using her authority to silence a powerless mother who had no money for high-powered lawyers and had to rely on overworked public defenders who were too easily swayed by the glossy reports of the Social Services Department. Today, at the Providence Municipal Court, the tension is suffocating. This is not a normal hearing. This is the final termination of parental rights trial. If Judge Frank Caprio signs the document lying on his desk, Maria will lose Leo forever. The son she carried and birthed, who is her only reason for living, will become someone else's legal child, and the birth records will be sealed permanently. Linda Perkins walks into the courtroom with the confidence of someone who has never failed, clutching a thick file under her arm filled with carefully arranged lies, convinced that today will be just another quick administrative procedure, like hundreds of cases she has handled smoothly before. But she doesn't suspect that in her utter desperation, Maria Santos has done the unthinkable. She didn't come alone. She brought with her a secret weapon collected in the shadows, something that is about to turn this trial into a seismic event. the bailiff's voice booms through the heavy silence of the courtroom, announcing the arrival of Judge Frank Caprio. Everyone rises, but for Maria, standing up feels like lifting the weight of the entire world. Her legs are trembling so violently that she has to grip the edge of the defendant's table just to stay upright. Judge Caprio ascends the bench, his face etched with the gravity of 38 years of judicial experience. He is a man known for his compassion, but today he looks tired, staring down at a docket overflowed with human misery. He adjusts his glasses and opens the file labeled "In the Matter of Leo Santos," unaware that the documents before him are a masterpiece of fiction created by the woman sitting smugly in the front row. To his left sits the state prosecutor, a man who views this case as a slam-dunk formality based entirely on the reports provided by Linda Perkins. To his right sits Maria's public defender, a young, exhausted attorney named Mr. Henderson, who met Maria for exactly 5 minutes before the trial began, and whose advice was simply to accept the loss and try to move on. The prosecutor begins his opening statement, painting a picture of a chaotic, dangerous home environment. He speaks of chronic instability, substance abuse, and emotional neglect, words that hit Maria like physical blows. Then Linda Perkins is called to the stand. She walks with a practiced grace, projecting an air of professional concern that borders on sorrow. When she takes the oath, she doesn't even blink. Under questioning, she weaves her narrative with terrifying precision. "Your Honor," she says in a soft, regretful voice, "we have tried everything to help Miss Santos. We offered counseling, we scheduled visitations, we provided resources, but unfortunately, the mother has consistently failed to prioritize her son." She pauses for dramatic effect, glancing at Maria with a look of fake pity. She missed 12 consecutive scheduled visits in the last 3 months alone. It is my professional opinion that Leo needs a permanent, stable home, which Ms. Santos cannot provide. Maria gasps audibly, her hands flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. "Liar!" she whispers, tears streaming down her face. "I was there. You locked the doors." But her lawyer shushes her aggressively, whispering that an outburst will only prove the state's point, that she is emotionally unstable. Linda continues, presenting a spreadsheet of failed drug screenings. "As you can see, Your Honor," Linda lies smoothly, pointing to the falsified documents, "the subject has tested positive for opioids on 3 separate occasions." The courtroom murmurs. Judge Caprio furrows his brow, looking from the documents to the weeping mother. On paper, Maria looks like a monster. The evidence seems overwhelming, documented in official letterhead, stamped and signed. How could a judge doubt the word of a decorated senior social worker against a frantic, weeping woman with no money? Judge Caprio leans forward, his eyes narrowing as he studies the file. He has seen bad parents before. He has seen neglect, but something about Maria's demeanor, the sheer raw agony in her eyes, gives him pause. However, the law relies on evidence, and right now the only evidence in the room belongs to Linda Perkins. The prosecutor rests his case, looking confident. He asks the judge to issue an immediate order terminating Maria's parental rights and paving the way for the pre-selected adoptive parents to take custody by the end of the week. It feels like the walls are closing in. Linda Perkins allows a small triumphant smirk to touch the corner of her lips, checking her watch as if she has somewhere more important to be. It is now the defense's turn. Mr. Henderson, Maria's lawyer, stands up slowly. He looks defeated before he even begins. He has no witnesses, he has no counter-evidence, because he didn't bother to look for any. He begins to stammer a weak plea for mercy, asking for one more chance rather than fighting the accusations. Maria realizes with a jolt of cold terror that her lawyer isn't going to save her. The system isn't going to save her. Judge Caprio, looking ready to make a ruling based on the one-sided facts before him, turns to Maria. "Miss Santos," he asks, his voice stern but not unkind. "Do you have anything you wish to say before I make my decision regarding the future of this child?" This is the moment. Maria pushes her lawyer's restraining hand away. She stands up, wiping the tears from her face, and reaches into her worn-out tote bag. She doesn't pull out a tissue. She pulls out a heavy black digital hard drive and a stack of notarized affidavits. The fear in her eyes is replaced by the burning fire of a mother protecting her cub. "Yes, Your Honor," she says, her voice trembling but loud enough to echo off the walls. "I don't just have something to say, I have something to show you. And I beg you, do not sign that paper until you see what is on this drive." Pandemonium erupts in the courtroom. The state prosecutor shoots out of his chair like a jack-in-the-box, shouting, "Objection, Your Honor! This is an ambush. This evidence was not submitted during discovery. It is inadmissible procedural error." Linda Perkins' face tightens, her knuckles turning white as she grips the railing of the witness stand. She leans toward the microphone, abandoning her soft, pitying tone for one of sharp indignation. "Your Honor, this is preposterous," she snaps. "Miss Santos is clearly desperate and trying to delay the inevitable. Whatever she has concocted on that drive is likely manipulated or irrelevant. We must stick to the official record." The court clerk looks uncertainly at the judge, hand hovering over the computer terminal. For a moment, it seems the heavy machinery of bureaucracy will crush Maria's last hope. The prosecutor is citing statutes and codes, building a wall of legal jargon to block the truth. But Judge Frank Caprio raises a single hand, and the room falls instantly silent. The objection hangs in the air, unanswered. He looks at the frantic prosecutor, then at the composed, icy figure of Linda Perkins, and finally rests his gaze on Maria, who is holding the hard drive out like an offering to a deity. "Counselor," Judge Caprio says, his voice low and dangerous, "we are deciding the fate of a 4-year-old boy, not negotiating a traffic ticket. If there is evidence that contradicts sworn testimony in my courtroom, I don't care about your procedure. I care about the truth." He gestures to the bailiff. "Plug it in." Linda Perkins swallows hard, a visible ripple of unease moving through her stiff posture. The bailiff takes the drive, connects it to the court's main display system, and Maria, hands shaking, guides the clerk to the first file labeled Visitation Proof. A giant screen descends from the ceiling. The courtroom lights dim. The video that flickers to life is grainy, time-stamped with a date from 3 months ago, the exact date Linda claimed Maria was a no-show. The footage, clearly taken from a security camera across the street, which Maria had painstakingly subpoenaed on her own, shows the entrance to the Department of Social Services. The timestamp reads 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the scheduled visit. Maria enters the frame holding a small toy car. She tries the door. It's locked. She knocks. She waits. She pulls out her phone to call someone. The video cuts to a split screen showing Maria's phone records, which she had notarized. 5 calls to Linda Perkins' office, all sent to voicemail. Then the video shows a silver sedan exiting the back lot of the building. The camera zooms in. The license plate is clear. The driver is clear. It is Linda Perkins driving away 5 minutes before the visit was supposed to start, leaving a mother sobbing at a locked door. A collective gasp sweeps through the gallery. The prosecutor freezes, his mouth slightly open. He looks at the screen, then at his star witness. Linda Perkins is no longer smirking. Her face is drained of color, leaving her looking waxen and old. I can explain," she stammers, but Caprio cuts her off with a look that could freeze water. "Quiet," he commands. "Play the next file." The next document isn't a video. It is a certified lab report from an independent toxicology center dated the exact same day as one of the alleged failed drug tests. The official state report filed by Linda claims Maria tested positive for opiates. The independent report, signed by a chief toxicologist and legally notarized, shows a completely clean panel, negative, 0 trace of drugs. The discrepancy isn't a mistake, it is a mathematical impossibility. It is proof of fabrication. Judge Jeffrey Caprio turns his chair fully toward the witness stand. The grandfatherly warmth that usually defines his presence is gone, replaced by the cold, hard steel of a man who realizes he has been played. "Miss Perkins," he says, his voice trembling with suppressed rage, "you swore an oath on the Bible 5 minutes ago. You looked me in the eye and told me this woman abandoned her child and abused drugs. The video says you lied. The lab report says you lied." He picks up the termination order he was about to sign, the paper that would have destroyed Maria's life, and holds it up. "Does the state have any other evidence that hasn't been manufactured, or am I looking at a crime scene right here on my bench?" The prosecutor is now flipping through his own files frantically, realizing he has been unwittingly drafted into a conspiracy. But Maria isn't done. "That's not the worst part, Your Honor," she says, her voice gaining strength. "Please play the audio file named The Deal." The bailiff clicks the mouse, and for a second there is only the hiss of static through the courtroom speakers. Then a voice cuts through the silence, sharp, authoritative, and undeniably belonging to the woman sitting in the witness stand.
It is a phone recording, crystal clear. "Listen to me, Mr. Advance," the recorded voice of Linda Perkins says, her tone dripping with annoyance. "You need to be patient. The Santos woman is persistent, more than I expected, but she's a nobody. She scrubs toilets for a living. No one is going to believe her over a senior department official." The Linda in the courtroom squeezes her eyes shut, her face flushing a deep mottled red. But the recording continues, getting worse with every second. "I handled the drug test personally," the voice snickers. "A long way. The results in the file ensure she looks like a junkie. The judge will sign the termination order on Tuesday, and the boy will be yours by the weekend. Just make sure the donation to the agency and my consulting fee clears by Friday. We agreed on $50,000 cash." The audio file ends with a click, leaving a silence in the room so profound it feels physical. It is the sound of a conspiracy shattering. The gallery is frozen in collective horror. They didn't just hear a lie. They heard the sale of a human being. They heard a trusted public servant treating a 4-year-old boy like a piece of merchandise and his mother like an obstacle to be bulldozed. Maria Santos stands tall at the defendant's table, tears still flowing, but her head is high. She is looking at the judge, waiting. The prosecutor, who moments ago was eager to crush Maria, now looks as if he is going to sick. He slowly moves his chair away from the witness stand, physically distancing himself from the radioactive fallout of Linda Perkins. That's illegal," Linda suddenly shrieks, breaking the silence. She stands up, knocking over her chair. "You can't use that. That was a private conversation. It's inadmissible. It's a deep fake. I never said that." She is unraveling, the cool facade of the professional bureaucrat dissolving into the panic of a criminal caught red-handed. She looks wildly around the room for an ally, but finds only disgust. Even her own lawyer, the state attorney, is staring at the floor, refusing to meet her eyes. She turns to the judge, pointing a shaking finger at Maria. "She entrapped me. She illegally recorded me. You have to arrest her." Judge Frank Caprio does not shout. He does not bang his gavel. He simply leans back in his leather chair, removes his glasses, and places them gently on the bench. When he speaks, his voice is terrifyingly quiet. "Miss Perkins," he says, "you are currently sitting in a court of law, not a marketplace. You just accused this mother of entrapment, but what I heard was a confession to perjury, fraud, falsification of state records, and human trafficking." He stands up, his robe flowing around him like the wings of an avenging angel. "You are worried about the admissibility of the audio. I am worried about the fact that you just admitted to selling a child for $50,000. He turns to the bailiff, his voice sharpening into a command that leaves no room for hesitation. "Officer, lock the doors. Nobody leaves this courtroom." The atmosphere shifts instantly from a civil hearing to a crime scene investigation. The bailiff moves to the double doors, crossing his arms.
Linda Perkins looks at the exit, then back at the judge, realizing she is trapped. "Mr. Prosecutor," Judge Caprio barks, turning his gaze to the state attorney, "I assume you were not aware that your star witness was running a black market adoption ring from her government office." The prosecutor jumps to his feet, sweating profusely. "No, absolutely not, Your Honor. The state, we had no idea. We were proceeding based on the files she provided. If this is true, I move to strike her entire testimony immediately." The Wraths are abandoning the sinking ship. "Strike her testimony?" Caprio laughs, a dry, humorless sound. "We are going to do a lot more than strike her testimony." He turns his eyes to Maria, his expression softening for the first time. "Miss Santos, where did you get this recording?" Maria steps forward, her voice steady. "The man she was talking to, Mr. Vance, he isn't a bad man, Your Honor. He and his wife thought the adoption was legal. When Linda asked for cash under the table, he got suspicious. He recorded the call. He reached out to me 3 days ago because he couldn't sleep, knowing he was buying a stolen child. He's outside in the hallway right now, ready to testify." The courtroom erupts again. The final nail in Linda Perkins' coffin hasn't just been hammered in, it has been driven home by the very people she tried to conspire with. Caprio nods, a grim satisfaction on his face. "Bailiff," he orders, pointing a finger directly at the shaking social worker, "take Miss Perkins into custody immediately. Do not let her leave that stand." The heavy oak doors of the courtroom swing open, and a hush falls over the gallery that is so absolute you can hear the hum of the overhead lights. Robert Vance walks in. He does not look like a hero. He looks like a man carrying a burden too heavy for his shoulders. Dressed in an expensive charcoal suit, clutching a briefcase with white-knuckled intensity, he avoids looking at the terrified social worker, frozen in the witness box. Instead, he walks straight to the center of the room, stops before the bench, and bows his head. "I am here, Your Honor," he says, his voice shaking slightly, "and I am ready to tell you everything." Caprio nods to the bailiff, who brings a chair to the center of the floor, bypassing the witness stand entirely, as if the judge can no longer stomach the formality of a system that has been so thoroughly corrupted. "Raise your right hand," the clerk instructs. Mr. Vance complies, swearing to tell the truth, a stark contrast to the lies that have filled the room for the last hour. Judge Caprio leans forward, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Vance," the judge begins, "you understand that by testifying here, you are admitting to participation in an illegal scheme. You could be implicating yourself." Vance looks up, and for the first time he looks at Maria Santos. Their eyes meet, the mother who almost lost everything, and the man who almost was the thief. "I know, Your Honor," Vance replies softly, "but I have a daughter at home. When I heard that recording, when I realized this wasn't an adoption but an auction, I couldn't live with myself. Miss Santos didn't lose her rights. They were stolen, so I could buy them." Linda Perkins lets out a strangled noise, half sob, half protest, but a sharp glare from the bailiff silences her. Caprio gestures for Vance to open his briefcase. "Show me," the judge commands. Vance places a glossy spiral-bound booklet on the judge's bench. It looks like a real estate catalog or a high-end travel brochure. The cover reads, "The Platinum Placement Program, Elite Adoptions for Elite Families." Caprio flips it open. His face, usually so composed, drains of color. He turns the book around so the courtroom can see. It is not a list of services. It is a catalog of children. "Page 4, Vance says, his voice cracking. "That's where I found Leo." The camera zooms in on the page. There is a photo of Maria's son Leo taken at a park, a photo Maria never authorized. Underneath his smiling face, the text doesn't describe his personality or his favorite toys. It reads, "Subject 402, male, Hispanic descent, high intelligence potential, biological tie severable, price $50,000 plus legal fees." The description reads like a listing for a purebred puppy. She told us, Vance continues, pointing a trembling finger at Linda, that the mother was a drug addict who didn't want him. She told us we were rescuing him from a life of poverty. She said the extra $50,000 was for expedited processing fees to bypass the state bureaucracy. Maria Santos covers her face with her hands, her body racking with silent sobs.
To hear her beloved son discussed as subject 402, to know that while she was scrubbing floors to buy him groceries, this woman was marketing him to millionaires as a luxury item, is a pain so acute it feels like physical torture. The courtroom is no longer silent. A low, angry murmur is rising from the gallery. The people realize this isn't just about one bad social worker. This is a machine. "Mr. Vance," Judge Caprio asks, his voice dangerously calm, "how many children are in that book?" Vance looks down at the floor. "There are 12 in this month's issue, Your Honor. And Miss Perkins told me that if Leo wasn't the right fit, she had new inventory coming in next week." The phrase, "new inventory," hangs in the air like toxic smoke. The prosecutor, now looking pale and sweaty, tries to interject, perhaps to salvage some shred of his career. "Your Honor, the state had no knowledge of this brochure. This is clearly a rogue operation." "Sit down," Caprio roars, slamming his hand on the desk, startling everyone. "A rogue operation? This woman was your employee of the year. She operated out of state office. She used state letterhead. And you're telling me nobody noticed she was running a human trafficking catalog from her desk?" The judge stands up, grabbing the brochure. "This ends today." He turns his gaze back to Linda Perkins, who is now weeping openly, not out of remorse, but out of the realization that her life is over. "Miss Perkins," Caprio says, "you didn't just fail these families. You hunted them. You preyed on the poor to feed the rich." He turns to the bailiff. "I want the chief of police on the phone now, and I want a warrant issued for every single case file Linda Perkins has touched in the last 10 years. But just as the judge reaches for his gavel to issue an emergency order, Maria Santos stands up again. She is no longer crying. She walks slowly toward Mr. Vance. The bailiff moves to intercept her, but Judge Caprio waves him off. Maria stops in front of the wealthy man who almost bought her son. The room holds its breath. Is she going to scream? Is she going to attack him? Maria looks at the wealthy man, then looks at the catalog on the bench. "Mr. Vance," she says, her voice steady and clear, "you have the evidence. You have the emails. You have the bank transfer requests." She pauses, looking back at the terrified Linda Perkins. "I don't just want my son back. I want to know who else is on her payroll, because a woman like that doesn't work alone." The silence that follows Maria's demand is heavy, suffocating. Linda Perkins looks around the courtroom like a trapped animal, her eyes darting from the stone-faced judge to the weeping mother, and finally to the exit where armed bailiffs now stand guard. The confident mask of the employee of the year has completely shattered, revealing a terrified woman, realizing she has nowhere left to run. I can't," Linda whispers, her voice barely audible. "If I talk, they'll kill me." Judge Caprio leans over the bench, his face darkening with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Miss Perkins," he booms, his voice echoing off the mahogany walls, "you are currently facing federal charges for human trafficking and kidnapping. The only person you should be afraid of right now is me. If you do not give me the names of your accomplices immediately, I will ensure that you spend the rest of your natural life in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole. Who else is involved?"
Linda bursts into tears, her body shaking violently. "It wasn't my idea," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger to the back of the courtroom, towards the gallery where a man in a nondescript beige suit had been sitting quietly, taking notes. "It was him, the regional director. He sets the quotas. He told us which children to target. He said the Santos boy was a premium asset because he was healthy and young." The entire courtroom turns. The man in the beige suit jumps up, dropping his notepad, and tries to bolt for the side door, but the bailiffs are faster. In seconds, the regional director of social services, a man entrusted with the safety of the state's most vulnerable children, is tackled to the ground, handcuffed, and dragged back to face the judge. "Bring him here," Caprio commands. The man is hauled before the bench, looking disheveled and defiant. "Director Harrison," the judge says, recognizing the high-ranking official, "I have known you for 20 years. I have invited you to my home for Christmas parties, and you are telling me that you are the architect of this monstrosity?" Harrison spits on the floor, his face twisted in a sneer. "You don't understand anything, Frank. The state budget was cut. We needed funding. The adoption fees kept the department running. We were placing children in better homes. We were doing them a favor." "A favor?" Maria screams, lunging forward before her lawyer can stop her. "You stole my son. You didn't save him. You sold him like a used car to balance your books." She turns to the judge, her eyes wild with panic. "Your Honor, where is he? If they were selling him, where is Leo right now?" The question hangs in the air, cold and terrifying. Judge Caprio turns back to Linda Perkins. "Answer the mother. Where is the boy? He's supposed to be in state foster care at the shelter on Elm Street. Is he there?" Linda shakes her head frantically, tears streaming down her face. No, he's not, since Mr. Vance backed out of the deal."
Director Harrison ordered an expedited transfer to a backup buyer. She checks the clock on the wall and her face goes pale. They moved him this morning. He's on a private charter plane at TF Green Airport. It takes off in 45 minutes. He's going to Switzerland. The courtroom erupts into chaos. Maria lets out a sound that is not a scream, but a primal wail of pure terror. Her legs give out, and she collapses into the arms of her public defender. Her son isn't just lost in the system, he is about to leave the country forever. Once that plane takes off, international jurisdiction laws will make it nearly impossible to get him back. He will vanish. Judge Frank Caprio does not hesitate. He hits the emergency panic button under his desk, a direct line to the Providence Police Dispatch. "This is Judge Caprio," he barks into the intercom, his voice cutting through the noise of the courtroom like a knife. "I need an immediate lockdown of TF Green Airport. Ground all private charters. I have a kidnapping in progress involving a 4-year-old child. Send every unit you have. Authorization code, red." He stands up, throwing his gavel down with such force that the handle cracks. "Miss Santos," he shouts over the commotion, pointing to the exit, "get in my police escort. We are going to get your son." The motorcade tears down Interstate 95 like a streak of blue lightning. Sirens wail in a deafening chorus, parting the heavy midday traffic as 4 police cruisers and Judge Caprio's black town car race toward TF Green Airport. Inside the vehicle, Maria Santos sits frozen, her hands clasped so tightly in prayer that her knuckles are white. Beside her, Judge Caprio is no longer just a presiding magistrate. He is a man on a mission. He is on the phone with the Federal Aviation Administration, his voice booming over the roar of the engine. "I don't care if it's the president's plane," he shouts into his cell phone. "I want that runway shut down. If those wheels leave the ground, I will hold the entire airport authority in contempt of court." They crash through the security gate to the private aviation terminal, the chain-link fence buckling under the force of the lead police cruiser. The scene on the tarmac is straight out of a nightmare. A sleek white Gulfstream jet is already taxiing toward the main runway, its engines whining with a high-pitched scream as it prepares for takeoff. The pilot, clearly following orders to escape at all costs, is ignoring the frantic commands from the control tower to abort. The plane begins to accelerate, picking up speed. Maria screams, pressing her face against the window. "They're leaving! They're taking him!" "Not today," the police sergeant driving the car grunts. He slams on the accelerator, swerving the cruiser directly into the path of the oncoming jet. It is a game of chicken between a 2-ton car and a multi-million-dollar aircraft. At the last possible second, the pilot slams on the brakes. Tires screech, smoke billows from the landing gear, and the massive plane lurches to a violent halt just 50 yards from the nose of the police car. Before the propellers even stopped spinning, SWAT teams swarm the aircraft, weapons drawn, surrounding the fuselage like a ring of steel. The door of the private jet opens slowly. A man in a dark suit, the backup buyer's private security, steps out, looking furious. "What is the meaning of this?" he yells over the noise of the dying engines. "This is a private flight. You have no jurisdiction here." But his words die in his throat as he sees who is stepping out of the black car. It isn't just the police. It is Judge Frank Caprio, still wearing his judicial robe, the wind whipping the black fabric around him like a superhero's cape. He walks across the tarmac with the stride of a titan. "I am the jurisdiction," Caprio roars, his voice carrying over the wind. "Step aside or be arrested for kidnapping." The security guard looks at the SWAT lasers pointed at his chest and wisely backs down, raising his hands. Judge Caprio turns to the car behind him and nods. Maria Santos bursts out of the back seat. She doesn't walk, she runs. She sprints up the metal stairs of the plane, her heart hammering against her ribs, terrifying thoughts racing through her mind. "Is he okay? Is he scared? Does he remember me?" She bursts into the luxurious cabin. There, sitting in a beige leather seat, clutching a small, worn-out teddy bear that Maria had packed for him the day he was taken, is Leo. He looks small, confused and frightened by the noise outside. He looks up, his big brown eyes widening. For a second, time stops. Then, a word that breaks the hearts of everyone watching. "Mama!" Maria collapses to her knees and wraps her arms around him, burying her face in his neck, smelling the scent of his hair, feeling the warmth of his small body. "It's real! He's here! I've got you!" she sobs over and over again, rocking him back and forth. "Mama is here! Mama is never letting go again!" Outside on the tarmac, seasoned police officers lower their weapons, wiping tears from their eyes. Even Judge Caprio, the man of steel, has to look away for a moment to compose himself. He watches the reunion through the open door, a look of profound relief washing over his face. He pulls out his phone and cancels the lockdown. We got him. The boy is safe. But as Maria carries Leo down the stairs, shielding his eyes from the flashing lights, the reality of what just happened begins to settle in. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a war. And back at the courthouse, the people responsible for this war are still waiting. Judge Caprio walks over to Maria, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Go home, Miss Santos. Take your son and go home. I will finish this." Maria looks at the judge, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispers. Caprio shakes his head. "Don't thank me yet," he says, his eyes turning hard as flint as he looks back toward the city. "Because now I have a sentencing hearing to conduct, and I promise you, mercy is not on the docket."